Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Aaron Porras, here with ILTV's Morning Briefing. United States Vice President Mike Pence has just arrived in Israel, and all eyes are now on the American leader after he was met with opposition, even protests, in both Egypt and Jordan earlier this week. Members of the Knesset's Arab Joint List, however, are actually boycotting Pence's speech altogether, mirroring the Palestinians' refusal to meet with the vice president at all while he's here in the region. That's one big reason why some say America's longtime role as a negotiator has effectively come to an end, despite Pence doubling down on America's importance to the peace process. Just yesterday, the King of Jordan urged Pence to reconsider the latest U.S. policy shifts regarding the Palestinians, which also includes slashing nearly half of American aid to the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA. Pence apparently told him that they would just have to, quote, agree to disagree, end quote. Israelis are on the edge of their seats now to see what Pence will say at the Knesset address shortly, and to see what the future of America's role in the peace process will truly be. Meanwhile, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is addressing the European Union today at the same time that Vice President Pence delivers his speech to the Israeli Knesset. There may be some purposely symbolic timing at work here, because Abbas is apparently asking the entire EU to officially recognize the state of Palestine. Many foreign leaders are skeptical if the timing is really right to recognize the Palestinian state, but even if it doesn't win statehood status, Abbas's speech is likely to signal the new Palestinian strategy moving forward, now that they've refused to negotiate with the US at all on the matter. Most of the Arab and Muslim world has echoed similar sentiments in the wake of Trump's Jerusalem decision, as well as America's slashing of over half its foreign aid to the UN's Palestinian Refugee Agency. The PLO has responded by threatening to renounce its recognition of Israel completely. With both sides pushing harder and harder into their corners, the ultimate fate of the two-state solution is more unclear than ever. Which means even if the EU does decide to intercede, it may simply be too little too late. 2 Israelis have been arrested Sunday in Thailand on suspicion of murdering Israeli mob boss Maor Malul. In fact, the Thai police allege that suspects Eyal Bokel and Dolev Zwaretz flew to Thailand with the sole intention of murdering Malul. As shown in the CCTV footage on the island of Koh Samui that led to their arrest, Malul was riding a motorbike with his wife when they were rammed from behind by an SUV. Then, while one suspect exited the SUV to try and stab Malul, the driver of the SUV continued to try and run him over. Suspects Zwaretz and Bokel are also both affiliated with gangs back in Israel. Malul was airlifted to hospital in Bangkok but succumbed to his wounds. His wife was injured, but details as to what extent have not been released. Citizens of the Gaza Strip are closing their businesses today in strike against the massive economic issues plaguing the coastal enclave. The people suffer from frequent blackouts, over 45% unemployment, and water that isn't fit to drink. Further, this comes just days after the announcement of a $110 million cut from the United States aid to UNRWA, the United Nations Palestinian Refugee Agency. The strike planned for today is said to be the largest in Gaza in years, and is just the latest response to a collapsing infrastructure and humanitarian disaster. After a tour of the Gaza border yesterday, Israeli President Reuven Rivlin even warned that, quote, the time is coming near when the infrastructure in Gaza will collapse, leaving many civilians in distress with no sanitary conditions, exposed to pollution, impure water, and epidemics, end quote. He then pointed the finger of blame, however, to Hamas, the internationally recognized terror organization that's been active administrator in the Strip since 2007. People within the Strip point their fingers at everyone from Israel for the blockade around Gaza, the PA for stalling reconciliation talks, and Egypt for closing the Rafah border. But while who to blame isn't completely agreed upon, the one thing that is that if something isn't done soon, Gaza will implode, and it won't be pretty for the neighbors. Anger in Ashdod over the closures of businesses on the Sabbath has only risen in the time since over 2,500 protesters took to the streets. And now, as if to add insult to injury, new reports have been made that, contrary to government promises, the state is hiring Jewish inspectors to enforce the Shabbat closures bill. Many local businesses who've been fined or warned in the last week have uploaded their notices to social media, showing they were signed by inspectors with typical Jewish last names like Maimon and Dahan. Many made comments pointing out the hypocrisy, saying things like, quote, the Ashdod municipality sends Jewish inspectors on Shabbat to enforce the law banning work on Shabbat. If you need to summarize the stupidity of the Israeli government, this is the example to use, end quote. And, quote, Deri, we don't bother you, don't bother us, referring to Interior Minister Aryeh Deri, who heavily backed the new law. The law allows Interior Minister Deri to oversee and reject local laws related to the work on the Sabbath. and it's supposedly intended to maintain the status quo balance between the secular and the Orthodox communities. But after passing in the Knesset by a very thin margin and continuing to face major opposition on all sides, calling it religious coercion, it doesn't look like the fight is quite over. That's all for now. I'm Aaron Porras, and see you later with our main daily broadcast from Israel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.